Guys, welcome back to another quick little photography shoot. Now I'm going to take you through kind of step-by-step what I'm doing here, and I'm talking through ideas in my head as I'm figuring this out. What I want to do today is a little different than past shoots you may have seen me do. I've done a lot of on-location shoots and even shots here in the garage doing studio work, but generally they've been low-key. Low-key images are where the subject is generally not fully lit, not evenly lit. It's a dark overall image. Think moody, think artistic, think high contrast. That's what I like in general, and that's generally what I go for when I make something like that. Now my product work, my commercial work is all shot high key. Think advertising shots, think illustrations, things where the product really needs to be shown in a nice even light. Well, that's what I want to go for here, but I got a couple challenges. One, I want to be able to drop the background easily because I want to use this high key image of the bike in different settings. What I have in mind, just off the top of my head, is a white even background and maybe a little shadow underneath. Something that's just cool to put up on my wall of the F09, maybe the FJR later. But I want to challenge myself a little bit, and we're going to do this with a bare minimum of equipment. So you can do it yourself fairly easily at home with just a tiny bit of photography equipment. Let's get started. So let's talk setup. Like I said, this is going to be very basic. You need a tripod. How tall of a tripod? Well, it depends on exactly what you're going for. Here's what I'm going for in this particular shot. I want something straight on, and I prefer it to be even with the engine. I like, when looking at the engine itself, these parts to be looking at my level. So I don't want to be above the engine. I don't want to be below the engine to see the bottom of the pipes or anything like that. Perspective-wise, this is completely up to taste. If you want to see the bike like this, that's one thing. You can use a wider angle, come up closer. That changes your perspective. Look at the wheels, for example, and the handlebars. You see, I'm still in the same location as the engine, but you can see the depth. It looks like we're closer to the bike. And then the further you walk backwards and the more you zoom in, your perspective changes with the focal length. And now it looks more two-dimensional. It looks flatter. The wheels don't have quite so much dimension. Where exactly you want yours to look, that's completely up to you. I like to see a little bit of dimension in the wheels, a little bit of angle in the fender, and a little bit of both ends of the bars, but not a whole lot. Right about here, that's what I'm going for, and that's what I like. So this is where I've got my tripod set up, roughly. You could also use the other side of the bike. It's completely up to you. Generally, I find on a single-sided exhaust bike, whatever side has the exhaust is its good side, but that's not a hard and fast rule. Check out both sides. You could also go for an angle. Not many people are going to enjoy the back quarter, but you could do a slight angle like this if you want to see more of the front. Generally, you're going to want your forks straight forward, but not always. Play around with it. Now, as far as space here, this is a small two-car garage, nothing special whatsoever. And it's more than enough room for what we're going to do. You could do this in a single-car garage, absolutely. You're not going to have quite as much wiggle room. We're going to want to be standing out of the frame, obviously, to the left and the right of the bike here to work our lighting. So I've got plenty of room here, but you could manage in a single-car garage, absolutely. Depth-wise, that, again, is up to what kind of perspective you're going for. I need pretty much all of the depth of this room to get what I want. Now, when I shut the garage door here, I've got barely enough room because I do have it on the kickstand, so my mirror won't hit the door there. I'm going to Photoshop the kickstand out. There are multiple things you can do to work around a kickstand. That's the easiest way to do it. Another way is to put it up on a block. That's what I do in my other videos I show. But this is easy enough where I'm just going to elevate the camera and Photoshop it out so the bike looks straight. Because, again, I'm going to drop the background, so I'm not worried about what the actual backdrop looks like. If you were to take it on an angle and not Photoshop out the background, you may find that it looks weird because you're going to notice whatever kind of backdrop you have, unless it is 100% evenly lit, you're going to see the tilt. So you may want to think about that. So, time of day here, not too critical. The sun is on the way down, but it's still plenty light out. You do need to control the light wherever you're shooting. I've got a shade on here, and I do have a blackout panel for the window if I need it, but because we're doing a high key, I don't think I will need it for this particular shoot. But I am going to turn off all the lights in the garage and make sure that one's off over there, because we do need to control the light as much as possible whenever we are lighting the subject. Now, as far as the light, I'm going to use a single flash here. You could, if you're on a real shoestring budget, do this with some kind of flashlight and a cloth. You need something to diffuse the light, though. Now, this is a very simple softbox. You could use a shoot-through umbrella. Those are a little bit less expensive, not much though. However, you're not going to get as much light control using an umbrella. So I do suggest one of these very inexpensive soft boxes. These are like 20 bucks on Amazon, if that. And I'm actually going to take it off the stand. I've used this before and kind of used it as a boom and gotten this right over the bike to get the light shining down. But again, those were shots where I wasn't cropping out the background, so I really needed to control what was in the frame. This one, we're going to be shooting and cropping right up like that to the bike. So it doesn't matter if I'm standing over the bike a little, you're not going to see it. So what I'm going to do is take this off. I'm not even going to use a remote. Don't even need anything special. You can use any flash in existence doing it this way. I'm going to use it in manual mode. And I'm going to show you how to trial and error it. I could meter this out and I could get it perfect in the very first shot, but that doesn't help you guys. So I'm just going to stick my hand through the opening there where the pole typically goes, and I'll just be pressing the test button to fire it at various power levels to dial in exactly what kind of light we want. Simple as that. Now, the reason you want a softbox or an umbrella and not just a bare flash is to get the light really soft. Soft light means no hard line shadows. See how this tennis ball is casting a shadow on here? And it's a very sharp line, very defined. This is not what you want generally in photography. Now look what happens to the shadow. I'll hold the camera still, I'll push the ball back. That shadow gets softer and softer and softer until it starts to blend in. You really can't see that sharp outline. As I get it closer and closer and closer, it gets harder. That's hard light and soft light. That's what this white panel does on a softbox or anything you hold in front of the light. Basically, your light source goes from being this little tiny area here on the flash, right here. It starts out as a bulb, about the size of my thumbnail. This panel here diffuses it a little bit. This is a refraction panel, and it's bouncing all around the center of the box and bounces out, and then lights up this front panel of the softbox, hence its name. So now your light source is huge. It's 2 feet by 2 feet. Makes a big difference. You also need to get this physically as close to the bike as possible, because the same thing will happen. If I were to put this in the corner of the room and take a picture of the bike, you're going to get that hard shadow, because this relative to the bike is, again, very small. But you get this close to the bike, all of a sudden those shadows stay nice and soft. And that's what we're going for generally, certainly with any kind of product photography, but especially in a shot like this. So we want the bike nice and evenly lit, and that should come out really well. So all I'm going to use for a backdrop is a simple white backdrop. Not because I'm actually caring about it being white. We can use any backdrop that is an even color. Ideally, you'd want to use a chroma key background, otherwise known as a green screen or a blue screen, because that's something that is easily removed in Photoshop. You're not going to see that green or blue on typically what you're shooting, so you can easily select it in Photoshop and get rid of it. But I don't have one big enough for this application. Mine are all people-sized, and we really need a good 8 to 10 foot wide backdrop at least. I just don't have a chroma key, but the white will work just fine. We just need to light it enough so that it shines through and we can Photoshop it out evenly. Anything we can easily select. There's no white on this bike. You would not want to use a white if you were shooting a white bike, for example, because then your edges would bleed together. Can't do that. You would have to use some other color. You also wouldn't want to use black. Obviously, there's a lot of black on this bike, and those will certainly blend together. So those are what you want to avoid. Anything other than the color you're shooting is good for dropping the background. So I'm going to shut the garage door here. I'm just going to clamp this up. I'm not even going to use background stands. Just going to clamp it right to the supports on the door and line it up. I'm going to be shooting with this camera, but I'll show you in the video you're watching what things actually come out with. So we will dial it in. First, we're going to get our ambient light level. This is going to be a semi-long exposure because the whole idea is here, basically we're light painting the bike. Again, I'm not using my normal flash equipment, not even using that as a flash. It's just a portable light source that I'm going to be holding and going around the bike. So we're going to be light painting. I'm going to take at least 3 shots, probably going to end up 4 or 5 to light the bike evenly. And I'm just going to go all sides and above and probably one in front of the bike to get it solid. All right, now let's talk camera settings. Like I said, this is going to be trial and error. I could get this right in the first shot, but I want anybody to be able to do this. What you're seeing on the screen is just an approximation by the camera, just to show you what's going on. It's not what the actual shot would look like if you were to take it. I'm in manual mode. That's an absolute must. I'm in manual focus mode. The first thing you have to do is focus on the bike itself. Now, if the room is dark, like this room is dark, the GoPro is auto exposing, but all I've got on is one little light here. So if I were to manually focus, it's really hard to see the bike. You can throw some light on whatever you're focusing on, and that will help you see it in camera. I can tell it right there, that's focused enough. So now in the overview, it's going to lighten it back up. Now, we've got 3 different camera settings to deal with. ISO, which is a sensitivity of the sensor itself. You want it as low as possible, but depending on your camera, you may be able to go fairly high without any detriment. The higher you go in ISO, the more noisy the image gets. Not really an issue with this camera for a good 3 or 4 stops. That's going to vary on your camera, but always keep that as low as you possibly can. Now, because we're doing light painting, that really means we can just keep it completely down because we are going to be able to vary our light source itself to dial in the light. We want the camera to take a nice clean image. So ISO all the way down. We want our aperture, ideally for the best sharp image, you want it a couple stops above wide open. So I'm at f5 right now. That's a good couple stops above wide open on this particular lens. For example, if your lens only goes down to f4, go up to f8, go up to f11. That's going to give you a really crisp, sharp image. Lenses are not their sharpest wide open, especially in the corners. So if you want these wheels to be as sharp as the center, don't use your lens wide open. Go in the middle of its range. That's going to be best. Now, shutter speed is going to depend on our working speed. How quick can we walk around the bike with the light? Maybe we can do it in 10 seconds. Maybe we need 15. Maybe we need 20. It's going to take a little experimentation. Right now, I'm just going to take a guess. I'm going to put it at 10 seconds here, but I'm going to walk around the bike. I'm going to pretend like I'm flashing the light and see if I can get it done in 10 seconds. If I need 15, it takes 15. Not really critical. So just walk around the bike, pretend you're flashing various parts. You are going to probably tweak exactly where you flash the bike when we go through the process. And don't forget, we also need to flash the backdrop a few times to get that nice and brightly lit so that we can remove it later on. We don't want shadows cast on that backdrop. So I'm just going to walk around it right now and see if 10 seconds seems like a good starting point. If I need 15, we'll go to 15. So just as a rough guess, I think 10's probably on the tight side. So I'm going to start at 15. It's not going to hurt anything. But we do want that as short as possible because, again, it affects the noise in the image. All right, so that's going to do it for our camera settings. Do a test shot. You should get back a completely black picture. If not, you have to control your light better. I'm going to turn off this light, of course, before I do the test shot. But at these settings, no fairly dark room is going to give you any image. That's what you want. But you want to look, make sure you don't have, a stray sunbeam or something coming into the shot. That would ruin it. So now, I'm going to take my light. I'm going to take it off the stand here and just hold it. I'm starting the flash at 1/4 power. Again, total guess. Just a shot in the dark. No pun intended. And I'm going to take a test shot. I'm just going to do a nice test shot at the same distance that I want to be from the bike, just like I was doing it. And when I'm looking for hot spots, I want to make sure that it's not blowing out any part of the image. Again, I'm looking for a nice even lighting on the bike. But if I get a part that's completely overexposed, that means we need to dial down the flash power. So I'm going to go ahead and do a test shot. Now this is going to be in the complete dark, so I can't show you guys on camera. But I'll show you a fake one here with the light on just so you can see what I'm doing exactly. All right, so that's all I'm doing. Holding the flash, taking the test shots, and making sure I don't have any blown out exposure on the bike itself. And from then, we're just going to go around the bike and take the shots. Let's see how it comes out. Okay, so after a number of test shots, did just a couple of rounds, started off at, it was actually set to an 1/8 power, and it was coming off very dingy. Kind of actually looked like the preview picture here, so that wasn't nearly enough. Now, depending on your flash, you can do this a couple different ways. If you have a very powerful flash like this is one of the Canon 600s, you can set it to almost anything but full power and just take continuous pops. And that's what I did to just very rough in the image I wanted. So I just went around, pop, 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 getting a cumulative light. So it mimicked shooting at a higher power level. And it just took a couple test shots to dial in exactly how much light I wanted. I did a couple where the front looked good, but the rear didn't. And then a couple where the rear looked good and the front didn't. So I dialed that in, trial and error. Again, just took a minute. So then I put the flash up to 1/2 power and was able to get the exact shot I wanted with just, I think it was 5 or 6 pops. And I'll show you that right here. Boom, there we go. That's in camera. So this is going to require virtually no Photoshop. We're just going to select the background white and remove it. I mean, that takes just a couple seconds. I could have maybe used a little bit more light right on the front there. You can see some of the other images I took where I was dialing it in. There you can see the front was lit pretty well. Not quite what I wanted though, and the rear way under. This one was opposite. But overall, that looks really good. And actually, that is very realistic because of the slope of that part of the tank. I will just touch it up ever so slightly in Photoshop though, because again, that's more of a low key image look and I want a higher key. But I could just completely reshoot this. You know what? I'm here. I'm already set up. May as well just do that. So I'm going to concentrate on doing another pop somewhere right about here, just to get a better angle and maybe a little bit higher to light up that part of the tank. But everything else is fine. All we're looking for is a nice even exposure on the white and a good lighting on the rest of the bike. All right, let's see how that came out. Perfect. Absolutely flawless. That's exactly what I wanted. So now you can see that Got just a little bit more light on it, and you can see how it completely evened it out. This has more contrast, more of a low key. That's more evenly lit. That's high key. Sweet. So now I'm just going to pull this into Photoshop, select the background, and again, you can do this in any image editor. There are plenty of free ones that do this kind of masking and background removal. Nothing special about that. And the only thing I'm actually Photoshop on the bike is removing the kickstand. And then we can drop that in whatever we want. I just want a nice white poster, maybe just a ground shadow. And I'll put that right here at the end of the video. That's it. See you next time.